So we are now starting with the webinar. Please let me know if you can hear me well. Thanks, Clara. So great. Welcome everyone to this webinar. Thanks for joining. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. This is the second webinar of a series that started in October. Just a brief introduction. The purpose of the series is to explore in depth the six main dimensions that politics and ideas and ASP's framework on context identifies as key factors to understand the use of evidence in public institutions. The purpose of the series is also to discuss how we can concretely incorporate these dimensions into our interventions and work. Just a word about myself. I'm Leandro, General Coordinator of Politics and Ideas, and together with Vanessa Weyrauch and Shahenda Saliman, I am one of the authors of the framework and the practical paper that we developed on how context affects the use of evidence in policymaking. So our first webinar focused on the first dimension of the framework, macro context, and this second one will focus on the sixth dimension, that is resources. We are very happy to see many colleagues that also joined the first webinar and that have registered for the entire series. And for those who would like to access the record of the first webinar, we will share it afterwards together with this one. So we are recording the event, so you can turn to it if you want it. So let me share our agenda for today. So we will start addressing the resources dimension of our framework and how its different elements influence the use of knowledge in policy practices. After that, we will open the space for you to ask questions about the resources and the framework in general. And the second part of the webinar, we will have a questions and answer session with Diego Gonnet, who is our guest today, and that will be an interesting opportunity to ask a policymaker how we can strategically use the resources for the use of knowledge in policy. Then we will close with some final remarks. So let me advance that by the end of the webinar, we will share a very brief survey asking you to rate the webinar. So please fill it because it is important for us to improve the series and the methodology in general. So very briefly, before we start with the resources dimension, let me recap where this framework comes from, especially for those who did not attend the first webinar. So together with INASP, Politics and Ideas embarked on the development of a knowledge systematization effort around the idea of context in relation to policymakers. So our goals were to identify and explore the main contextual factors that affect the promotion and use of knowledge in policymaker, and also to systematize some practices from different interventions in different developing countries that promote the use of knowledge in policy, both from the supply and the demand side. generally, the goal was to help policymakers, researchers, capacity building experts, and donors to make more effective and strategic decisions regarding the use of knowledge in policy, identifying the most promising areas of change for the different types of
Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa Wayward from PNI. I think that Leandro is facing a problem with his audio, so until he returns, I'll continue with the presentation. So very briefly, I don't know where you lost him, but basically this that would enable policymakers and those working with them promote the use of research to make strategic decisions in terms of the areas that present more promises in terms of embedding and creating a culture of use of production and use of research. Leandro, I think we have you back.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. So these are the challenges of internet connection, which is something that I didn't mention before. So thanks, Vanessa, for following the idea. So yes, so this is generally what our framework intended to do. I was sharing you with the goals and the three products. Then it's the framework itself, a practical paper with implications, and an interactive product that we'll present right now, which summarizes the content and lessons from both products. Before I move to this interactive product, let me invite you to share your ideas and concerns and comments about our work through the chat. So we will pick up them and address timely. So let me now move to the interactive product that you can follow here in case you want to watch it in your own computers. One second until it gets. So some of you that were part of the first webinar know the framework. We have also shared it in the invitation to this webinar and also in the last email we sent. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm sure until we get this, I'm sure you can watch the product yourself in your computers. So if you are watching the home screen of the interactive product in the link that I share with you, you will see that the dimension is the 6 dimensions of our framework are the macro context, which has been addressed in the first webinar, the intra and inter relationships with state and non-state agencies. The third dimension is culture. The fourth is organizational capacity. Then we have management and processes. And finally, which is the one that gathered us today, the resources. So these are the big circles that you see in the framework, in the home screen of the website. Let's focus on the one of our interest today. There is resources, which refers to those resources that are critical to each organization's performance. So this refers to the set of resources each organization counts to achieve its goals. So we all know that an organization, in this case we refer to a state agency, may present, for instance, an organizational culture that appreciates the use of knowledge and that also has a staff that has the right capacities and skills to generate or use existing research. But what happens if they lack of financial resources, if they lack of time and infrastructure? So then the real opportunities for the use of that research and knowledge will be significantly affected. So this is the idea of presenting the resources as one of the key dimensions of our framework, to see how it, in addition to other dimensions that you are seeing there, how it affects the use of knowledge in policies, and also how it can enable the use of knowledge in policy. So now, as we did with all dimensions, you'll see that we break down the resources in 4 subdimensions. So they are the smaller green circles that you see in the screen that Vanessa is navigating. So let me go briefly through them. So we present 4 of them. So the first one is the budget committed to research. And of course, this is a very important factor, and it's one of the most cited as a restriction in the degree that organizations can generate and use knowledge. So if you don't have a budget already committed to the generation of and use of knowledge, it will affect your methodological capacities, the analytical skills among the public servants, and of course your capacity to hire qualified researchers or research institutions to conduct specific studies or evaluation. So what happens many times if you don't have a previous budget committed to research? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. So what happened many times is that if you don't have a budget already committed to research, there will be like a division between your policy agenda and the research that you need to address those policy issues. So this subdimension also refers to the role that donors play and to what extent their funding promote the generation and use of knowledge. So under this subdimension, we should consider the availability of fundings from international organizations, which is something that we will address also later with Diego. So let me also remark that the budget availability is not only important to generate evidence, but also to use it. For example, if you conduct an evaluation or a study that suggests that you should scale up a program that is working well, if you do not have the resources to do so, you won't be able to apply the recommendations or the suggestions that emerge from that evidence. So these are different ways in which budget affect the use of research and knowledge in policy. So let us move now to the second subdimension, which is knowledge infrastructure. So the existence of a good knowledge infrastructure in government departments will also affect how you can use the research. So this subdimension might refer to the existence of research units, to knowledge management strategies and processes that help you organize the existing information, also to databases that compile previous research efforts and findings. So we know that in public organizations there are a lot of information that circulates in the hallways, but many times it is not well systematized, and that hinders us of use that evidence. So we need good knowledge infrastructure to use to take advantage of the existing information and also the new information that can be created. So also let me share that for good examples or for good practices on how to deal with knowledge infrastructure or set up knowledge infrastructure processes, you can turn to some of the merchant practices that we identified in our work, which are sharing the big green rectangle that is linked to the other resources I mentioned. So in this case, you can turn to the Ghana's to the experience of the Ghana's Research, Statistics and Information Management Directorate, which was set up within the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations. Another good example is the processes that the National Council for the Evaluation of Social Development Policy in Mexico set up, which encouraged the government to set up a follow-up system to prioritize and use the recommendations that comes from the evaluation studies. So the third subdimension is technology. One important and crucial element is internet connections. We all know, depending on where we work, that internet access is poor or unreliable in many low and middle income countries. Also, many states have not yet digitalized all the information they have available, and this creates that the different departments work in isolation because they cannot access all the available information of the states. So if you can have digital tools to manage information, it will allow you to a more efficient and timely use of knowledge. But this is not the only thing that is important because you can have good technology or enabling technology, but what happens with the skills that public servants need to take advantage of that technology? That's another important issue that we need to consider under this subdimension. Finally, we have the dimension of time availability, which is very important in the relationship between research and policy. So, time scales for decision making sometimes are incompatible with sorry, can you hear me now? Yes, sorry about that. So I was sharing some ideas on the time availability subdimension, which is also an important issue that we need to consider when dealing with the resources dimension. So these are basically, and in a very brief words, an introduction to the resources dimension and subdimension. So let me now ask you questions. Considering what we have just addressed, what will you say that subdimensions weighs most in your practice? In order to answer this, please answer this very brief poll. You just need to mark which do you think from your practice that is the subdimension that affect most the use of knowledge. So just 2 minutes for you to answer. I see some of you are sharing your answers. So different opinions. So time availability is being one of the most highlighted as the most important one. Then we have knowledge infrastructure and also budget. Okay, Clara, yes, of course it's difficult, but that's our proposal, to just think which is the most important one. Of course, there is a combination of all of them, what will finally define to what extent we can generate and use research. Yes. It's like you, Clara, and Chai will say, but anyway, it's worth to think about this. Yeah, it seems that time availability is for you the most important one, followed by knowledge infrastructure and budget, but none of you have pointed technology. Anyway, that's an interesting discussion to continue. So now, before we turn to Diego to understand his experience, let us open the space for you to make questions based on what we have addressed so far. Not only about the research dimensions itself, but also about the framework. If you have questions, you can jump in through the chat with your ideas. Now I will end the voting. Thanks for sharing your your answers. So I will be picking up some of your comments. So Vanessa points that you can have budget, technology, and infrastructure, but what happens if you don't if you don't have the time to make a wise use of all those elements? Yeah, that's interesting. So time is important because then you might have many things to deal with and feel overwhelmed, and that's not the goal that you wanted, the scenario that you wanted to have at the beginning. So time availability is of course important, and I'm sure we all experience that in our work. So Clara is also sharing a reflection. Yes, so that's an interesting idea. So sometimes you can promote small changes that are significant without a big budget or resources. Yes, that requires for sure some creativity, and it's really on the DNA of the organization and the people to deal with limited resources to make a small or plant the seed for future changes. So we will also can ask Diego about how he is creative about using limited budget. Again, Vanessa insists with the point of time availability. So what do the others think? What are, please don't be shy and share your own concerns. Okay, so yes, the idea of small changes and baby steps to create and encourage the organization to promote ownership and buy-in within the organization. It's a wise strategy. I saw Tywell was sharing, typing. If you want to share any idea, please do it now before we move to Diego. Okay, let's see, let's wait for some of you. Okay, time availability, sure. Okay, Lorna, you're back. So great. I would suggest that we move to the questions and answer session with Diego, which is our host today, and take advantage of his experience and lessons to address the resource dimension. So Diego, I guess you are there.
Hello. Yes. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everybody.
Great. So just a couple of words about Diego. So Diego, as you have seen in the evaluation, in the invitation, sorry, is a policy analyst and a team leader at the Planning and Budgeting Office of the Presidency of the Republic in Uruguay. And he has experience on projects about information system for monitoring and evaluation, open governments, open data, and active online transparency. So Diego has been, we are very grateful for your presence today, and let me explain you and the colleagues very briefly the methodology.
Great.
The idea is that we will start with some questions to you, and the colleagues can also jump in through the chat with more questions and experiences and comments from what you are sharing with them. So I would like to start with one questions that recaps what we have been discussing. That is, so in which subdimensions does your organization have more strengthened, and in which less strengthened? So basically, what are the most important subdimensions in promoting the production and use of knowledge in the state from your perspective?
Okay. First of all, it's my pleasure to be sharing this webinar with all of you, all the participants. So I'm very grateful. Well, I have to say that, as you mentioned, I work for an office which is attached to the Presidency of the Republic. So we, in general, are better off in terms of resources than, for example, our line ministries or other agencies. Our starting point is usually better than the average public sector organization in Uruguay. Anyway, I consider we still can do it a lot better regarding our knowledge infrastructure and technology. For example, we are mainly consumers of information, which is produced elsewhere in the public sector. And we usually get that information through traditional channels such as contacting people who produces it and phoning them, or getting the documents or databases through emails, which is good if you don't have more resources. But as we have more resources with budget, particularly we can allocate. We are now trying to move on, asking an external consultant to help us defining some processes to get that information through automatic channels. I mean, web services and so on, and standardizing this information, so all the teams here in the office can use it. It's a very common situation right now that we often may ask for the same information twice or even 3 times in a year, which is obviously very inefficient. And we gather this information in our own laptops or Excel files. So if any other member of some other team in our own office needs the information, it is not available to them. So we are now trying to invest some money in defining better processes for gathering the information and storing it, so everybody can get it when they need it.
Great. Yeah. So yes, it's very clear how the lack of good knowledge infrastructure makes decision making inefficient, as you say. So you said that you hired a consultant to help you to enhance this infrastructure. And let me ask you, in that sense, to what extent you have budget lines in your agency to commission this type of works, or generally research studies and evaluations and different studies that will help you in use, or that will help you generate or survey the information that you need to make decisions?
Well, as we are an office which has a clear mandate on producing policy advice, we have budget allocated for example, policy evaluation and policy monitoring. I don't think we lack that kind of budget. But when it comes to perhaps doing a survey, a national survey or something like that, which may be more expensive, well, we don't usually have money for that. So we have money for conducting public policy evaluation and monitoring, some money for enhancing information systems in line ministries, so we can get what we need. But not that much money for example, surveys or other kind of data gathering. But in general, I insist that budget, in our particular situation, budget is not the main issue. It certainly is, perhaps for line ministries or other agencies in our country, not perhaps for us. Leandro, can you listen to me?
Hello, Diego. I'm jumping again.
Yes.
I am sorry. I'm having some difficulties today, so he came out, and so I'll follow up.
Okay.
Yes. I was just writing a question, so maybe I just follow up with my question as I was listening to you, and you were stressing this factor that within your agency, the committed budget is not an issue, and I agree that maybe for some line ministries that might be the case. But since votes on these subdimensions revealed that most, not most, but there was like a more, we had more votes in terms of time availability. I was going to ask you about how do you feel that plays out in the way you use knowledge within your agents, and not specifically only in your personal case and your team, but in general, how does time play out when we're thinking about the whole process of incorporating knowledge in a policy formulation, and also implementing and monitoring and evaluating these policies? Do you feel this is an issue in terms of resources?
Yes, absolutely. It's always a restriction and a challenge, but we tend to think about time as a constant. I mean, the time frames are something which we don't feel we can alter, and we have to work within very limited time frames. So what we try to do is to use that time, that very limited time, more wisely, and try to spend less time gathering information and checking the quality of this information, and more time thinking on it and producing some analysis. But certainly, time is always a restriction.
No, excellent point, and thanks for sharing that. I also found, and in conversations with other policymakers and case studies, that a lot of time is spent in the data collection phases, and that people end up not using enough that information because they don't invest the needed time in analyzing and in drawing conclusions and findings and discussing about what they're going to do with that knowledge. So I find it a very interesting practice that you discovered that, and that in your case you allocate time to that very specific task, right? Which has to do with of use.
Yes, we try and we should make it better in planning better how are we going to answer any of the questions we are made. So and this means how much time are you going to allocate for data gathering and how much for analyzing it. I don't think we do it good enough. We have a lot to do it better. But yes, that brings us again to the point of knowledge infrastructure. If you kind of automatize data gathering and quality checking, then you have more free time for analyzing it.
Yes, excellent point. That's why these resources are very much linked, and yeah, I'm happy to learn that even though of course there's always room for improvement, that the fact that you can at least have awareness about the importance of these phase of analyzing data. And of course, as you say, this is always linked to the other sub-dimensions, and there's an interplay there, but one has to make decisions too based on where each agency or each governmental institution stands regarding the four sub-dimensions. So thanks for bringing this interrelationship into the table. I'll let Leandro continue now.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Diego. Diego, to add on what Vanessa was.
Just another idea which came up that the first thing about time availability that we should do is at our level as public officials is to understand these very tight time frameworks, because sometimes we forget about this dimension, and of course political decision makers do not forget about that. And if we don't have this frame clearly in our minds when we are working, we will probably fail our mission of providing them with good pieces of advice.
Very interesting point, Diego, about sometimes it's about understanding the general process of policy making, but sometimes it has to do with the political economy of contextualize processes and situations. So let me pick one of the question from Tywil. So she asked how you are able to use research with limited budgets. So Diego has already said that restriction on budget is not one of the challenges his organization faces because of its mandate, but if UT will allows me to tweak, to make a little tweak on the question and ask Diego if you have any recommendation to other policymakers working with limited budget, and how they could be creative, and how they can use those limited resources to expand the production and use of knowledge in policymakers.
Well, I understand perfectly the situation. I think one good advice is that you should know the people who really knows a lot about what you are working on. I mean, the most knowledgeable people within the government and in the universities. You have to know them, who they are. You have to have their email on hand, because this is very basic, but it definitely helps when you don't have enough money or enough time to produce something more elaborated. Just call them and talk to them, produce a good relationship with them, and you have their knowledge at hand when you need it. I insist, it's very basic, but it works. Know the people who knows a lot about what you have in hand.
Yes, that it's a very important point, and it has to do also with how the good net, or to have the right networks and contacts that can help you in your work. And sometimes that's easier when you have an academic background, for instance, which we know it's your case, and you, along your career, you have been building all those relationships with other experts in different fields. So, and it also has to do with a dimension that we will address in another webinar, which has to do with the relationship with other non-state agencies. So there are several comments. One has to do with a question if you have any process, or you said that infrastructure is one of your weaknesses, but do you have any process that you follow in order to make use of the available information and research? Any maybe institutional process for decision making on that, based on research and information?
No, I think we just we improvise a lot on that, and that's something we really have to make it better. Anytime we have a new question or a new piece of advice which is asked to us, we improvise and create a new way to get the information or the analysis, which is again not the best way to do it. But I don't think we have much on procedures, standardized procedures for getting answers when we need them. We rely heavily on implicit knowledge. I mean, on the knowledge which is in our team's head or memories. We rely heavily on contact to get the information and to get the analysis when we need it. So, as I said, this is definitely not the most efficient way to do it, and we are trying to change that reality.
Thanks for your answer. We understand. I also let me link that with Lorna's comment that sometimes you have the data, but you don't. You cannot use it because you don't have or the right processes in place or time availability, and then that data is stored for the future. But at the end, the problem there is how timely is that information. So if you cannot use it when you need it, so great. It's sorry. So yeah, we see that how all the subdimensions are connected to each other, and one influence the other. So let me ask you, Diego, if you think that your organization or the public servants within your organization has good incentives to use the available information. So if you remember, we have discussed how some agencies or has had a general minded of use evidence, and then there are no clear incentives because the decisions, for instance, of career path is not linked to an accurate use of information, or of good decisions that are made. So what do you think that there is something to do in terms of incentives for people and organizations to use evidence in decision making?
Well, again, maybe our reality is kind of different from other line ministries because we are mainly policy advisors and we are expected to produce timely and sound evidence for policymakers. But still, yes, we have some problems in terms of incentives to share the information with other members of the team or of the office. Sometimes some people has created the career or advanced their careers based on the control of some certain information, which is very important, and they are not very generous on this issue. I mean, they are not very willing to share this information with other teams, with other colleagues who could analyze it and produce more value on it. So we really should work on incentives to share the information and share the knowledge we already have in some people. Definitely.
Leandro? Hello, can you hear me? I cannot hear. Hello?
I can listen to you, Vanessa. Probably not, Leandro.
No, but let's continue because we have a question here coming from Clara. She's asking about how much is the service you provide actually being used. If you do have a demand, to experience that you have a demand from those who end up making decisions. Do you think that your service is appreciated and used by them?
Well, it's a mixed reality, I guess. Sometimes we have certain clear demands from our decision makers. Sometimes we have to stimulate that demand. We have to go and knock their doors and tell them, listen, the public or the opposition is discussing this issue and we know this and that about this same issue. You could use this information. Right. It's like a mixed reality, I guess.
Yes, excellent and interesting the way you raise their interest linking to the public's concerns and demands. That's a very important factor too.
Thanks. Yes, no, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, well, we wait for more questions. So I wanted to pose a question that I don't know to what extent it is influencing in the case of your country, but I'm sure it is for other developing regions, that has to do to the role of international organizations as providers of resources for research. What are their role in those terms, and to what extent are they influential regarding the flow of resources invested? Do they find their investment influential in terms of the generation and use of research?
Well, this is an extremely interesting issue for me and I guess for everybody, because we know that sometimes international organizations have some money, but also some conditions on what we should ask or what we should analyze or what how we should define our questions. I think in Uruguay we are a middle income country. International organizations are still very influential, but kind of getting less and less influence as times goes by, because our own offices are getting stronger. So now I think we are in a position that we still need their money, but we can negotiate conditions on how to use this money and what kind of questions we want to make and to answer, what kind of methodological approaches we want to adopt, what kind of information analysis we can and we want to produce. So now they are still influential, but it's a kind of more even negotiation on what they need or think it's the proper thing we should do, and what and our own idea on what we should do. And I think
Great.
this is gaining this kind of capacity to really set our own questions and use the money which we are offered in the ways we believe it's more useful for our country is a very important thing, and it's a capacity we should keep building.
Thanks, Diego. Yeah, that's very important, the issue of negotiation between what donors want and can want to promote with their investment, and what are your own priorities as a country and also as an organization in terms of information. So it has to do with also the independence and autonomy of your decision. So yeah, it's good that you need to find the good balance between, or the equilibrium between, the investment of donors and your own priorities. But yes, as Clara says, you in Uruguay might have that context, but we know that in other countries, the influence of donors is huge, and at the point that they many times make the rules of decision making. So I was thinking about the importance of having skilled staff in terms of research methodology, evaluation approaches that are in a better position to negotiate and contest what donors sometimes wants to do or impose. So I think that's another important point that has to do with the organizational capacity, which is another dimension of the framework, but also with the resources that you have to invest in capacity building of your own staff. Yeah, but Vanessa makes a good point that sometimes if you have a broader community of knowledge producers and users, you can also bring them in the discussion with donors and make the discussion more richer, and yeah, in order to avoid unilateral influence. So involving other stakeholders is an interesting idea too. So
yes, definitely. When I think that when you can show a donor that you know what you're talking about, and or that in your country there are people, organizations, universities, or whatever who have some strong background on what you are discussing. This really helps. I mean, to define the agenda in a more even way.
yes, very good point. So let's do other 5 minutes of questions if you have, and then we'll need to close. But it's been a very interesting discussions. So Yeah, so Tywheel comes again with the point that overload of information and limited time affects the use of the information. So my question is here, not only for Diego, but for all the attendees is, okay, we can have, what could be good strategy or decision to make this, to overcome time availability or limited availability of time, overcome the challenges of knowledge infrastructure, and make a real use of what already exists. So I'm stick to the idea, or to the suggestion of Clara, of starting with baby steps. So if you have, how can you really use what you already have in place before you go to new information generation and so. Not to answer now, but maybe for you to think, because this issue of time availability and the time scales of policymakers make us very easy to go to the next step before we have time to address or to make a good use of what we already have and created. So it's a wheel that don't stop, and sometimes we need to find how to make use of what we already have. For you to think, yes, maybe about that. Yeah, Diego, please.
No, I think one of the keys is allocating more time for analyzing than producing information. Even if the information you already have is very poor or limited, well, if you don't have the time to, I don't know, produce the survey and then analyze the results, okay, analyze what you have. Ask to whoever knows something about this issue, go to the line ministry and check the data there. Just allow more time for analysis than data gathering or production.
Great, Diego. Thank you very much. So, in interest of time, let me ask you if you have a final reflection on the issue of resources for generate and use evidence in public institutions. We have very interesting discussions, a lot of food for thought. But if you have any final reflection that you'd like to share with us, it is very welcome.
No, I would say that budget constraints usually kind of create the conditions for innovation. I mean, if you don't have money, you have to figure out how to solve your situation quickly and cheaply. And this allows for good ideas to come out. So if you don't have enough money, okay, think about simple, small steps. Like as I said, trying to create a good network of people who knows a lot about what you are working on. It's a very good and cheap idea. Try these kind of things, and don't expect to have I don't know, all the money in the world or all the computers or information systems. Just manage with what you have in your hands.
Great, very interesting thoughts. Very important for context in which resources are for this type of efforts are limited. So thank you very much on behalf of Politics and Ideas and in us for sharing your lessons, your experience, your ideas. I think we had a great discussion, and it is not something that we close here, that we can continue addressing in future conversation. So thanks. Let me now share some final remarks in terms of the webinar and the framework. So for the participants, let us share that we really encourage you to use the framework besides reading the papers. So we developed this to help policymakers, researchers, and practitioners to promote changes in public organizations regarding the way they generate and use knowledge. So the usage of this tool is our purpose. I will encourage you to identify windows of opportunity and data entry and entry points. Sorry. To promote this usage if you find it useful. So in that sense, if you navigate the website or if you go to the practical paper of our study, you will see some practical implications for the use of the framework, and that can inform the design, the implementation, and the monitoring and evaluation of your policy interventions. We really encourage you to go through these implications that will help you identify and prioritize areas for change, and also to build on what others learn in similar initiatives. So this is our invitations. Let me now tell you about the next steps. As I told you, this is a series.
Hello. So yes, I think that some of us cannot hear Leandro again. Just to share that we have this upcoming webinar on December the 13th. We hope that most of you can make it. We will have a former social minister of Peru talking about culture, which is a very interesting dimension. So hopefully you can join us by then. And we'll let you know as the others dates are established so that you can start penciling those dates on your agendas. Thank you very, very much for participating today. Diego, especially for sharing your experience with so many good reflections and thoughts. And finally, ask all of you if you can briefly rate the webinar and send out your votes. That will be helpful to form the upcoming ones. No, not at all, Leo. Your English was was very understandable and your points were very clear. So thanks, and I think all the participants are appreciating your inputs. And thanks for participants who have shared also questions and thoughts. We look forward to having you all the next time in December. And that being said, thank you very, very much.
So just to add on Vanessa's thanks, thank you again. I hope you can hear me now. So sorry about my the challenges with connectivity. it is very tricky because we talked about the challenge of technology in developing countries, and I am now in the United States, and you see, I also face technology difficulties. Sorry about that. We will improve for the next time for sure. And thanks, Diego.
Thank you, all of you.